There are assassination methods that history books barely mention, methods so strange, so technically precise, and so deliberately untraceable that they sound more like fiction than fact. The KGB, the Soviet Union's feared intelligence agency, didn't just kill people. They built an entire science around it, a hidden science of poisons, gadgets, and psychological manipulation. They called it Laboratory Number 1, a secret division of the KGB dedicated entirely to developing poisons, untraceable ones, ones that mimicked natural death, ones that worked at a distance. What I found when I dug into the declassified files was something that still feels unreal. These weren't improvised methods. They were funded, researched, tested, and used. Let's start with what became the most famous KGB assassination ever carried out on Western soil. London, 1978. A Bulgarian writer named Georgi Markov is crossing Waterloo Bridge. He feels a sudden sharp sting in the back of his right thigh. He turns. He sees a man picking up an umbrella from the pavement, muttering an apology. Within hours, Georgi Markov develops a severe fever. Within days, he is dead. The doctors are baffled. The cause of death is listed as unknown at first. Then a forensic pathologist discovers something extraordinary inside Markov's leg, a tiny platinum pellet, the size of a pinhead, drilled hollow and filled with ricin, one of the deadliest substances on Earth. The umbrella had been modified. A tiny compressed gas mechanism in the tip fired the pellet on contact. It was nearly silent. It left almost no mark. Ricin comes from castor beans. It disrupts the body's ability to produce proteins at the cellular level. Even a microscopic dose, smaller than a grain of salt, can be fatal within days. What made this method so dangerous was its delay. The target walked away feeling only a mild sting. Hours passed. No one connected the cause. By the time symptoms appeared, the assassin was long gone. British intelligence later confirmed that Bulgarian secret services carried out the hit, but with direct KGB support. The umbrella, the pellet, the ricin, all of it came from Moscow. But the umbrella pellet was just one page in a very long catalog. The KGB had entire arsenals of slow-acting poisons designed for what they called quiet liquidation. One method involved doctored cigarettes. KGB chemists developed compounds that could be absorbed through the lips or lungs over repeated exposure. Too subtle to detect, too slow to trace. These weren't fast-acting poisons. They were designed to accumulate, to slowly degrade the target's health over weeks or months until death appeared entirely natural. Declassified files reference a substance called K2, or carbylamine choline chloride. It was colorless, odorless, water-soluble. It could be added to food or drink without any detectable change. Then there is the radioactive chapter. And this is where the KGB's methods crossed into something that still seems almost impossible, even knowing it actually happened. Alexander Litvinenko was a former FSB officer, successor to the KGB, who had defected to Britain and was actively helping MI6 investigate Russian organized crime and intelligence operations. In November 2006, he meets two Russian contacts at a London sushi restaurant. One of them, later identified as a former Russian agent, pours him a cup of tea. Within days, Litvinenko is in the hospital. His hair is falling out. His organs are failing. Doctors have never seen anything like it. They eventually identify the cause, polonium-210. Polonium-210 is an extraordinarily rare radioactive isotope. It emits alpha radiation, detectable only inside the body. On the outside, you would never know you were being poisoned. After Litvinenko died, British investigators traced a trail of polonium-210 contamination across London. Hotel rooms, aircraft seats, office chairs, everywhere the Russian visitors had been. A British public inquiry concluded in 2016 that the operation was probably approved by Russian President Vladimir Putin and the head of the FSB. Moscow has always denied it. What stunned investigators was the audacity. This wasn't a clandestine operation. It left a radioactive trail across one of the world's most monitored cities. It was almost designed to be noticed. Beyond polonium and ricin, the KGB's chemists developed an entire family of exotic nerve agents under a program that wasn't revealed to the West until a Soviet chemist defected in the 1990s. They developed compounds that could be delivered as aerosols, invisible, odorless mists released in enclosed spaces. A single breath in a hotel corridor or a car was all it took. The program was called Foliant. The agents it produced, later known in the West as Novichok, were designed to be up to 10 times more lethal than the most powerful Western nerve agents. The world got a live demonstration of Novichok in 2018 when former Russian double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter were poisoned in Salisbury, England. They survived. Barely. Chemical assassination was only part of the catalog. The KGB also perfected what internal documents called the theatrical approach, deaths arranged to look like accidents or suicide. Every staged death had to pass what the KGB called the investigation test, meaning local police, foreign coroners, and even Western intelligence services needed to accept the official cause of death. One preferred method was traffic accidents. Targets were followed, their routes studied, and then a carefully engineered collision was arranged at a moment when witnesses were absent or minimal. Falls from windows were equally common. Documents from the KGB's own post-Soviet archives, released partially in the 1990s, list dozens of defectors and dissidents who fell from windows across Europe. Beyond killing, the KGB developed an equally disturbing line of chemical research, drugs designed not to kill, but to break, to destroy a person's ability to resist, to lie, to maintain their identity. The KGB used modified versions of scopolamine and sodium amytal in interrogations, drugs that induced a semi-conscious state where the subject would answer questions without being able to fabricate. But the most disturbing use of psychotropic drugs was not in interrogation rooms. It was in Soviet psychiatric hospitals, used against political dissidents who were officially diagnosed with sluggish schizophrenia. Dissidents who challenged Soviet policy were institutionalized, not executed. Instead, they were drugged indefinitely with haloperidol and sulfazine, which caused extreme physical suffering and permanent psychological damage. What I kept returning to while going through these files was the sheer institutional scale of it. This wasn't the work of rogue agents. It was policy. It had departments, budgets, career tracks. Department V, later Department 8, was the KGB's dedicated assassination unit. Their targets were not just enemies of the Soviet state. They hunted defectors, whistleblowers, journalists, Western intelligence contacts. Their operational reach was extraordinary. Department V maintained networks of illegal operatives, called illegals, embedded inside Western countries, living under deep cover for years, sometimes decades. When an illegal was activated for a kill mission, they operated completely independently. No contact with the Soviet embassy, no official diplomatic cover, and no backup if things went wrong. Most of what we know about these programs came from defectors, Soviet chemists, officers, and intelligence analysts who crossed over to the West and brought files or memories with them. One of the most significant was Vasily Mitrokhin, a KGB archivist who spent 12 years secretly copying classified files by hand, smuggled them out of the Soviet Union, and handed them to British intelligence in 1992. The Mitrokhin Archive, as it became known, contained details of KGB operations in dozens of countries going back to the 1930s. It confirmed many assassination programs that the West had only suspected. Another critical defector was Vil Mirzayanov, a chemist from the State Scientific Research Institute for Organic Chemistry, who publicly revealed the existence of the Novichok program in the early 1990s. Here is what makes this history feel urgent rather than historical. The FSB, Russia's post-Soviet intelligence service, inherited the KGB's personnel, its methods, and apparently its operational philosophy. The Skripal poisoning in 2018, the Navalny poisoning in 2020, the Litvinenko case in 2006. Each time a different exotic substance, each time a deniable operation, each time the same institutional signature. Alexei Navalny survived a Novichok attack in 2020, one of the most documented assassination attempts in history, confirmed by multiple independent laboratories. He was later imprisoned and died in custody in 2024. International courts, human rights bodies, and intelligence agencies across NATO countries have now formally attributed multiple assassinations to Russian state intelligence. The umbrella has become a satellite dish. What I found most chilling wasn't the methods themselves, it was the rationale. KGB internal doctrine described assassination not as a crime, but as a surgical state instrument, equivalent to a court sentence. They called it executive action. There were formal written orders, approval chains, bureaucratic sign-offs. This was the terrifying part. Not that individuals acted outside the system, but that the system itself required these actions. Officers who carried out these operations were not punished. Many were decorated. Department V killers received state honors. Their work was considered patriotic service, no different from any soldier following orders. And the targets were often just people who wrote things: journalists, academics, historians, scientists who disagreed with official policy, people whose greatest weapon was a typewriter or a set of facts. The KGB's assassination program is not ancient history. The methods, the rationale, and the personnel thread directly through to the present. Understanding how this machine operated is understanding something that is still running. Western intelligence services today still run entire training modules based on KGB assassination case files. Understanding their methods protects against them. That is why these files were eventually declassified. The Mitrokhin archive, the Church Committee hearings, the Salisbury inquiry. Each document release gives us a more precise picture of what state-sanctioned murder looks like when it is industrialized. Waterloo Bridge still stands. Thousands of people cross it every day. Most of them have no idea that one of the most technically sophisticated political murders of the 20th century happened on that pavement. Laboratory Number 1 was officially dissolved after the Soviet collapse. Some of its scientists went to work for private companies. Some were hired by other governments. Some of the formulas were never fully accounted for. And in the years since, independent researchers have documented new compounds, modifications of old KGB formulas turning up in cases around the world. The laboratory dissolved. The research apparently did not. The most disturbing thing about all of this is not the strangeness of the methods. It is the patience, the institutional patience, the capacity to spend years, decades, building tools designed to end one single life in a way that cannot be proven. Every one of these cases is a real person, a real death, or a survival marked permanently by what was done to them. The files have been declassified. The methods are known. The question of accountability is still open.